Hello and welcome to our special broadcast. I'm Shereen Bhan. 19 years after talks were initiated, India and the European Union have finalized a landmark free trade agreement. Now, the deal is expected to be signed later this year after it undergoes legal vetting and is ratified by the European Parliament. If all goes well, the trade agreement should come into effect by 2027 and is expected to reduce tariffs on 99% of Indian exports and 97% of European shipments into India. The FTA was finalized in the presence of Prime Minister Modi and the top EU leadership in New Delhi today. Remember, 27 nations are a part of the European Union bloc. Let's quickly get you a snapshot of the broad contours of the mega FTA. Let's start with auto. All made-in-India cars will get duty-free access to the EU once the deal comes into effect. India, on the other hand, will cut tariffs on EU cars priced at over 16 lakh rupees from as high as 110% to 10% eventually. This will be quoted. It will happen in a phased manner. This would apply to a quota of 2.5 lakh vehicles annually. This is a big one for EU's automobile sector. Tariffs on made in India EU wine, spirits and beer will also be cut drastically. Let's talk about Indian exports now. They will benefit from the deal. Marine exports like shrimp, lobster will now attract zero tariffs. In fact, if you look at the zero tariff regime, chemicals, footwear, apparel, textile, consumer goods, base metals, toys, sports, gems and jewellery will not attract any tariffs once the deal is signed, so the labour-intensive sectors get a big leg up. Speaking at the joint press conference, Prime Minister Modi said the EU deal would strengthen global supply chains. EU Commission President Ursula von der Leyen said the mother of all deals will create a free trade zone for 2 billion people spanning India and the EU.
आज भारत ने अपने इतिहास का अब तक का सबसे बड़ा फ्री ट्रेड एग्रीमेंट संपन्न किया है.
We did it. We delivered the mother of all deals.
The European Union and India stand together as a strategic and reliable partners.
Well, let's decode what the FTA will mean for Indian industry. CII President Rajiv Memani joins me on the show. Also with us are Mukundan, President-designate CII and Managing Director and CEO of Tata Chemicals; Deepak Shetty, the Chairman of CII Manufacturing Committee and President of ICEMA; Anjali Singh, the Chairperson CII Northern Region, and the Executive Chairperson Anand Group with us this evening. Anjali, gentlemen, many thanks for joining us here. It's been 19 years in the making. As long as I've pretty much been reporting, we've been talking about the possibility of this deal going through, and at least the talks have now concluded. We still have to wait a bit longer for it to be operationalized. Rajiv Memani, the biggest impact for India Inc., which are the sectors that you believe stand to benefit the most?
So firstly, Shereen, I think we must compliment the government of both EU and India. I know it's taken a long time, but we all know that the real acceleration happened in the last 6 months when both of them really got onto it and put every energy behind it, and also ensured that things that are politically sensitive, I think both have tried to ignore that, and at the same time tried to create a win-win solution for both sides. So I would say overall it's very positive, both from an Indian standpoint and from a EU standpoint. And sectorally, I would say all the labor-intensive sectors that we have, I think they will probably benefit the most, including engineering, auto components. So whether you look at textiles, you look at leather, you look at gems and jewelry, you look at chemicals, you look at auto components, you look at engineering, I think all of them will benefit a lot. I mean, EU's imports are almost $3 trillion, and India's share is somewhere between 2 to 3%. I mean, overall imports are 6.6. What they import from outside of EU is roughly 3 trillion. So I think if we can move that share from 3% to 5 to 6%, the gain is very, very significant. And I think that's something that I think as industry, we should really focus on, because the Duty rate comes down from in some products from 12% to 0%, 8% to 0%, 4% to 0%. So in all these cases, it's very beneficial. And as we have seen in almost all trade deals, once you get into the position of doing a trade deal, then it creates a much wider platform between the economies. And that leads to not only just the normal increase, but newer areas, greater flow of investments, greater flow of services, and also this will enhance mobility. So I think overall, I would say very, very positive, Shereen.
You talked about mobility, and I was coming to that in just a second, because an important aspect of this agreement is also people mobility, the export of knowledge workers out of India to the EU. I'll get to that in just a second. But Anjali, let me address the issue that Rajiv Memani was making. And, a large part of this deal has also been focused on auto. That's been one of the constraints that's held this deal back over the last 19 years. But it's finally been done, of course, in a phased manner. India will open up its market and cut its duty quite significantly for imports from EU, from automakers from EU, but also for the component industry in India. The EU market, Anjali, on both sides, a win-win?
So, firstly, my congratulations as well for this historic deal. It is definitely going to propel India towards, our mission of Make in India. And I think it really shows the trust for the Indian economy and in India going forward. But MSMEs, being the backbone of our industry, we can see how this is going to open up a plethora of opportunities and how we can see it driving a huge potential for both the automotive and also the auto component industry, bringing together innovation and possibilities on both sides.
Yes, it certainly does open up those possibilities. Deepak Shetty also with us. Deepak, what does it mean now for companies in the capital goods sector, companies in the auto component sector, in the infrastructure sector? As Rajiv Memani was pointing out, a whole host of sectors operating in India will now come into the zero tariff bracket: gems and jewelry, leather, textiles, apparel, footwear, toys. So there's a whole host of sectors that stand to benefit. But on balance, what do you see as the biggest impact of this, Deepak?
I think, first of all, I would like to start by congratulating the Honorable Prime Minister and the Honorable Commerce Minister on this historic deal, as it is rightly called the mother of all deals. But if you take a step back and look at the trade between India and EU, in 2024, out of the almost $135 billion, it was like $79 billion of exports from India. But what is very unique is out of those $79 billion, $30 billion is services. So the balance is manufacturing. So the present relation itself is skewed more towards manufacturing. And this creates a great opportunity. Now, even within those exports from India, if you look at, other than the petroleum and the diamonds and the gems and jewelry, what are the items? The items are parts and accessories, as you rightly mentioned, smartphones, iron and non-alloy steel elements, including rubber tires. So I think it's a great opportunity for companies in India, particularly in the MSME sector, to sort of leverage the opportunity that we have, and particularly from the cost point of view. But I would look at more from the value addition that Indian companies can do. At the same time, we can learn a lot. Because we have seen that the whole, if you look at Germany, the whole manufacturing sector there was developed based on the Mittelstand concept. We are also looking at something similar, which is being driven by the PLI schemes. And I feel there's a great opportunity for Indian companies to leverage. You spoke about capital goods sector. I think this will also benefit companies who are importing machinery from Europe. Also, today, if you look at it, there are almost 6,000 European companies which are already working in India. I feel more companies will be encouraged to invest in India. And particularly in today's geopolitical situation where everybody is looking at X country plus one, I think this can really help position India as the very, very sort of reliable supply chain partner for all the 27 countries in European Union. So I feel this agreement is a great opportunity for the manufacturing sector in India, supported by the government's national manufacturing mission, the new policies which are supporting more and more manufacturing in India.
Yes, absolutely. And as you pointed out, this is also an effort to attempt diversification, which is much needed at this point in time to find newer markets and more reliable partners as well. Mr. Mukundan, many thanks for joining us. We've been talking about some of the benefits of this India-EU FTA, the sectors that are likely to be the biggest beneficiaries. What do you see as the long-term, the medium and the long-term impact of this trade agreement going through?
Thank you, Shereen. I think firstly, let me also add in my bit of compliment to the teams, both sides, on this historic deal, which obviously was highlighted as mother of all deals. So really well done to everyone. There's been long-standing work, which I've seen over the last 10, 12 years working on to make sure that industry can collaborate and come together. I really think that 3-4 things India straight away benefits. One is on the technology side. I think Europe has a lot to offer in terms of technology for the kind of scale of solutions which we want, the kind of businesses which we run, and also in terms of also the direction we want to take for sustainable future for India. And in terms of market access, the European companies get access to a large Indian market. And this is going to be truly something which will be built on partnership. I want to build on what Deepak highlighted, that Mittelstand, which is the small and medium family enterprises. I think they will find a good ground in India to gain scale. So what India is going to get is design, technology, access to markets for some of our labor-intensive businesses, which you already have highlighted. So long-term, it's a win-win. It's a partnership which has been done on the right kind of structure. Also, the other element is many of the European companies have long-standing presence in Europe for many, many years. Europe has been a partner for many years. So that history itself plays out very well. Lastly, I think the time difference between the two continents is much, much smaller, easier to collaborate, easier to work. So it's going to, and I think from using the base of India and EU, I think other markets will open up, especially Mercosur, also Africa. I think these are opportunities which we need to explore as we work together. How do we build these partnerships to also open up new markets around the globe?
Absolutely. As we were just listening to Mr. Mukundan there are many European companies who've been in India for, in fact, some as long as 100 years, 100+ years. So there is a long lineage there of association between India and Europe. Piroz Kambata, people might switch to wine now and give up Rasnak, considering the fact that it's gotten a lot cheaper, but Gen Z isn't drinking as much. So that's good news for you. But outside of that, olive oil, duty cuts on that, confectionery, breads, duty cuts coming in for European companies wanting to import into India. So in many ways, an opening up of the market, so to speak, Piroz.
I actually said that. When the UK thing was announced, that now we have to wait for the champagne, and now the champagne will flow. Because legally, champagne can only come from France. And now, so if you ask me, the good news, not the fact that the alcohol is reduced, but the fact that today we have done the right FTA. And I should congratulate the government. UK, India, UAE are the right FTAs. Earlier, we used to sign which were not synergistic. Imagine now we are opening up the whole Europe for manufacturing based from India. Imagine leather, chemicals, food is all now open to us. Today, I am sitting here today in Gulf Food. Gulf Food is not a Gulf food. It is India food. Half the stalls here are Indians. And who are coming to our stores? People from Europe, from Africa, from America. Now imagine that there is a clear, distinct advantage I'm going to be able to offer to my consumer, to my customer. And I think this is a real game changer, I would say, for the Make in India movement. Because at one stroke, you are opening up one of the world's second largest, I would say, consumer markets to Indian products. And to that extent, I congratulate the government. And for food processing, it is great news. Olive oil, margarine, these are all small things. Let them come at lesser duty. But imagine all of our products going there. And second, Shereen, I think 2 other things in the FTA which have been signed, I think I would like to highlight. Number one is that they are going to ensure that the GI tags of India and Europe are protected. That means that we will protect their French champagne, they will protect our Nasik grape also. So I think that is great news, because I somehow believe that Indian food products will be exported as per our GI. Number 2, they have said that there will be enough trade mechanisms to ensure that there are no disputes. And if there are disputes here, they are done in a very time-bound manner in terms of trade disputes. So I think to that extent, I believe this is a very good FTA. Services sector also has been included. And this can be a model for other FTAs also. So I would congratulate the government. This is definitely good news for the Make in India movement.
Bring out the champagne. That's Firoz Kambata for you. But Rajiv Memani, I want to go back to the point that was also being made that outside of manufacturing, the two agreements, the two frameworks that have been inked as far as mobility goes, it includes people who are studying in EU institutions to be able to get a window between 9 to 12 months to be able to find a job. You also have easier access for people who are trying to find jobs, including doctors. By the way, Indian credentials for medical professionals will now be recognized in the EU as per the Indian government. Rajiv Memani, the knowledge mobility aspect of what this deal provides.
No, it's no, Shereen, you've captured it. I think from a mobility standpoint also, I think mobility commitments have been made for intercorporate transferees, for their dependents, and also on the on the business traveler side. You rightly said that there are conversations that are on for on the students, their post study. Also social security agreements, which are very important from a cost standpoint, I think. So all those hopefully will get sorted out. The frameworks for those have been laid out. That's very interesting. Then for at least 144 sectors in services, they've laid down predictable access, which is good because I think it gives a level of predictability going forward as far as services is concerned. And thirdly, the fund that they have, which is the $100 billion fund, which is the Research and Innovation Fund, or as they call it, the Horizon Fund. I think there also India will be participating in that fund in the sense that they will make India a part of that. That's my understanding of that. So I think that's also from a R&D standpoint, technology, AI, digital standpoint, I think that's very valuable. So in all these cases, services, mobility, I think it becomes very, very, very vital. And I always think, and whenever we are now visiting countries as part of the CI delegations, where India has entered into an FTA or is in the process of entering into an FTA, you can see the bridges becoming stronger and stronger. And this is, as you rightly said, if you just look at it, the total GDP of EU all put together is 20 trillion. If I include all the FTAs that we have done till now, that's about 16 to 17 trillion. So in terms of size and significance, this is larger than everything else that we have done, at least from a GDP standpoint, and also the level of trade that they do. So if you add this, you add 44, 45 trillion of USA and China, almost apart from 2 or 3 large pieces, I think we are more or less now covered in a very short span of time in the last 1 year, 12 to 18 months, a large number of FTA. So from a services standpoint, from a manufacturing standpoint, from a technology transfer standpoint, and from my perspective, very importantly, also from an investment standpoint, this provides massive acceleration.
Mr. Mukundan, let me address that issue on investment with you because, it will still take about a year. We're given to understand, and this is the exclusive conversation that we had with the EU Trade Commissioner, who said that the aim is to try and operationalize this by 27. Do you expect an acceleration of engagement, bilateral engagement, private sector to private sector engagement ahead of that operationalizing of the agreement itself?
That's a great point, Shereen, because I think investments take a long, long time in terms of going through the process, getting all the approvals. So I think people will start working right away. I think we have an opportunity because many of the investment ones from the time the commitment is made to seeing the steel and cement on the ground for building those plants, it almost takes about 24 months. So now companies can start planning, exactly putting this into the framework of how they're going to serve the market. I think this serves extremely well. And hopefully by 27, all this is inked and we are ready to go. I think companies will also be ready. We've seen this in every FTA has been highlighted by Rajiv, that we see an acceleration not only of trade, we see an acceleration of services, we also see acceleration of investment. So really, we got to look at it as a three-way point. But as far as EU is concerned, one big additional anchor which we need to work through is the R&D and the technology relationship. Many of the areas which are real tech, where physical products are made, I think EU offers us solutions which are second to none. In many cases, actually, India finds those products easier to adapt for our market conditions. And hopefully, I think that will accelerate even more.
Well, gentlemen, let me also bring in somebody with the European perspective on the panel. Santosh Iyer of Mercedes-Benz India joins us. Santosh, many thanks for joining us. Big leg up for the EU automakers with the phased quoted tariff reductions coming in. And of course, as far as CKDs are concerned, Santosh, here's what we are given to understand, that they're likely to fall from 16% currently on CKDs to 8.2%, 8.25%. What does this mean now for companies like Mercedes, for other EU automakers who have significant manufacturing presence in India already?
Came out of the announcement with Honorable Prime Minister and also with Ursula von der Leyen. I think the clear focus is on double engine. That's what Modi ji said. You know, this is now double engine between India and EU, and they should really drive growth for the entire economy on both sides. So for us specifically, yes, I think the CKD has been one way of manufacturing that we have been doing it in India, and reduction would definitely help. But on the other side, this also mitigates against the exchange rate depreciation that has happened over the last, you know that 19% in the last 1 year. And as we speak today, the exchange rate is at 108. So at least it helps us to mitigate those losses with this reduction in CKD. And now we are waiting for the timing. At least hopefully it comes as early as 2027, if not 2028.
So, Santosh, you know, how much, given the rupee depreciation and all of that, how much cheaper are cars likely to get here in India with the tariff reduction? More importantly, what can we expect now by way of portfolio enhancement? You're already making a large part of what you sell in India here in India. So what can we now lead to in terms of portfolio enhancement for the auto sector?
See, Shereen, this is a misconception that the prices are going to crash now, because let me explain that 90%...
I didn't say crash. I didn't use the word crash, Santosh. I said, how much will prices come down by?
No. So let me clarify. 95% of the cars, 90% of the cars we sell in India are all at a 15% duty when we talk about CKD parts and locally produced cars. Now, yes, you can say that it will now come down to 8.5. So there is a chance of 7-8%. But as I said, largely this will be mitigated by the exchange rate changes. We have been increasing prices by 2% quarter on quarter. Last year, we increased by 6%. Already from 1st of Jan, we have increased by 2%. So maybe the price increases can stop after this one. And maybe with this coming in, this should help us to mitigate to some extent. But reduction in prices, we don't see that in the near future. On the other side, when you talk about CBUs, that is where the biggest change is. From 110%, it comes down to 40%, and then gradually moving down to 10%. So, you know, at some point of time, this helps us to get more cars. Today, cars like the G-Wagon and some of them, we don't get allocations because we were not adding the 110% duty and selling them in India. A lot of people think the ex-Germany price, we add 110, add the 40% GST and we sell. No, we were already subsuming a lot into our margins for making it competitive here. So maybe once that improves, maybe we get more cars for India, more variety of cars. And also remember, the EVs are out. And right now, one of the biggest product offensive is also on EV when it comes to Europe. So EVs are out of the FTA, and that will continue the way it is.
And, you know, Santosh, I'll get this comment from you, and then I'll get others to comment on this as well. One of the concerns is that with the tariff reductions coming in, will companies be incentivized to add capacity in India, to make more in India? They're already making in India, but will they add capacity in India, especially in sectors like auto, where EU has sufficient capacity, is probably sitting on more capacity than they need? Let me start by asking you.
So firstly, it's not a capacity topic. Both EU has capacities, even in India. We, for Mercedes-Benz, we have a plant with 3,000 crores. We can make 20,000 going up to 40,000 cars. So I think capacity was never an issue. It's about demand. The one biggest thing about FTA would be the generation of demand, because as economy grows, trade grows, we are like a trickle-down effect is what we see also for our business. And the last 10 years, we have seen that happening with the GDP and per capita GDP going up. You know, we sold 220,000 cars till date, 50,000 cars in the last 3 years. So that shows the momentum based on the per capita GDP growing up. So this FTA should not be looked from tariff reduction. It should be more looked up from making the economy stronger. And that should help us drive consumption, which will increase manufacturing investments and so on and so forth.
Yeah, Rajiv, Memani, back to that point, demand generation is a different story altogether. But on the apprehension that we will see less of make in India and more now of import into India because of the tariff reduction, how do you respond to that?
I completely disagree with that. So I would say any time when there is demand expansion like this, there has to be more manufacturing that comes into India. When global companies look at setting up, and if India wants to be part of global supply chains, they do want to not only look at a very attractive domestic market that we have, but they also want to set up export bases. And to the extent that you have zero tariffs in Europe and some of the other larger markets, I think it facilitates greater investment in manufacturing in India. Yes, there could be some cases where you may be leveraging capacity or surplus capacity in other markets. There's no question about it. But I think in overall, I would say this will see an acceleration in manufacturing, particularly I would say in labor-intensive sectors, which is where I think India needs the maximum amount of investment. So. You can't have a 0-100, but I think if you look at an aggregate, I think India will benefit much more from being part of global supply chain, from having greater manufacturing, from having greater access to market. I mean, this is amongst the few deals that we are doing where the size of the market is 5 times our GDP. So we are getting access to a market which is 5 times our GDP. So I mean, I think there has to be, and India is a very from a competitiveness standpoint, India is very competitive in manufacturing. And I think it continues to be, as we go through reforms, I think it will continue to be more and more competitive in terms of manufacturing. So I think overall, we'll definitely...
Mr. Mukundan, 30 seconds, Mr. Mukundan, do you also foresee more joint ventures, more deals, more M&A now between India and EU companies on the back of this deal going through?
Certainly, Shereen, I think I want to add also a bit to what Rajiv has already highlighted. I think we're going to see a lot more investment. I think the growth of India is already a growth engine for the world in terms of rate of growth, and with access to market, which is 5 times our size. I think we are fundamentally redefining the way the growth will happen for companies. And I think companies will work together, collaborate together. That could be joint ventures, that could be acquisition, that could be technology partnerships. I think what is very appropriate at this point of time is I think there's comfort on both sides in terms of protection of intellectual property, protection of brands. So I think we've done a great job in making sure that the companies thrive in India, the European companies thrive in India. And we've seen already an example of many of the foreign companies listing in India after growing multiple times what their scale and size in their home market is. And I think India will offer them a tremendous opportunity to grow and thrive, and also offer Indian companies to access markets which are far beyond us.
Yeah. Well, a win-win. That's the consensus here on the CNBC TV18 CII special panel. And of course, many sectors likely to benefit. But more importantly, it will be the labor-intensive sectors in India that stand to benefit the most. And from a European standpoint, it opens up the large consumer market that the Europeans have been waiting for. Rajiv Memani, R. Mukundan, Deepak Shetty, Anjali Singh, Piroz Kambata and Santosh Iyer, many thanks for joining us. I'm sure there's going to be a lot of clinking of champagne and rasna at the same time this evening as the two leaders walk away from a deal that's been well done for both sides. Thanks very much for joining us here on CNBC TV18. A quick break. When we return, the EU Trade Commissioner live only on CNBC TV18.